The moment your body experiences cold, something powerful happens beneath the surface that most people never even realize. It's not just discomfort or chill running down your spine, it's a biological switch flipping on. Your body goes into a mild shock, releasing hormones like epinephrine and norepinephrine, and suddenly a hidden fat burning system called brown fat comes alive. Think of it like turning the ignition on an engine that's been sitting idle. There's a sharp click, and then whoosh, everything starts firing. This brown fat doesn't store energy like regular fat. It burns it aggressively to produce heat. And that means one thing. Your body starts using up stored fat, especially the dangerous kind around your organs, known as visceral fat. But here's where things get even more interesting. You don't actually need extreme cold exposure or ice baths to activate the system. Food alone can trigger similar effects, and one of the most powerful examples comes from something surprisingly simple: omega-3 fatty acids. Researchers became curious about how omega-3s influence body fat, and what they discovered changed how we look at metabolism entirely. These healthy fats don't just support heart health, they directly activate brown fat, helping your body burn more calories and shrink stubborn fat deposits around your waist. In one study, participants who ate salmon 3 times a week for just 8 weeks lost up to 15 pounds. That's not a small number, that's a significant shift. And it happened without extreme dieting. But what truly challenges conventional thinking is what happened next. Scientists assume that only oily fish like salmon, packed with high levels of omega-3s, could produce this effect. So they tested a lean fish cod, which contains far less omega-3, only about 284 milligrams compared to salmon's 1,500. The expectation was minimal results, but the outcome was surprising. People who ate cod 3 times a week still lost around 10 pounds in 8 weeks. That changes the narrative completely. It means you don't need to rely on expensive or highly concentrated sources of omega-3s to influence your metabolism. Even modest amounts, when consumed consistently, can activate fat-burning pathways in your body. And that brings us to a deeper truth. Your body is far more adaptable than you think. You're not stuck with your current body composition. With the right inputs, you can shift how your metabolism works and take control of fat storage and fat burning in a very real, measurable way. But fat loss is only one side of the story. What really matters is where that fat is stored and what it's doing inside your body. A long-term study conducted by Cornell in New York followed around 3,000 women over 13 years. And what they found was both eye-opening and concerning. These weren't overweight individuals. They were women of normal body size, some slimmer than others, but none classified as obese. On the surface, they appeared healthy, but researchers used advanced imaging techniques like DEXA scans to measure their internal body composition, specifically looking at hidden fat levels. This is what people often refer to as skinny fat, when someone looks lean on the outside but carries excess fat internally. And the results were striking. Women with higher internal fat levels had a threefold increase in their risk of developing breast cancer over the study period. 3 times higher, despite looking normal from the outside. The reason comes down to inflammation. Excess visceral fat isn't just sitting there quietly. It actively releases inflammatory chemicals into the bloodstream. Imagine your body as a container that can only hold so much. Even if the outside looks fine, inside, things can be leaking, overflowing, creating a toxic environment. And cancer thrives in that kind of setting. Inflammation acts like fuel. If there's even a small tumor or abnormal cell growth, inflammation feeds it, accelerates it, turns something minor into something much more dangerous. It's like a dying campfire that suddenly gets doused with gasoline, what was fading, suddenly reignites into something intense and uncontrollable. And this isn't limited to breast cancer. Research has now linked excess visceral fat to at least 14 different types of cancer, including colon, lung, ovarian, and prostate cancer. The pattern is consistent. More internal fat means more inflammation, and more inflammation increases risk across the board. This is why focusing only on weight or appearance can be misleading. What truly matters is metabolic health, and that's shaped by what you eat and how your body responds to it. The good news is that inflammation isn't something you're powerless against. In fact, there are very specific foods that can actively reduce it and help restore balance inside your body, shifting you away from a state that promotes disease and toward one that protects against it. What you put on your plate every day has a direct impact on whether your body stays in that dangerous, inflamed state or moves toward healing and balance. And the truth is, some of the most powerful anti-inflammatory tools aren't complicated or rare. They're foods you already know, just often overlooked or underused. Take berries, for example. Blueberries, strawberries, blackberries, raspberries. These aren't just sweet snacks. They're loaded with polyphenols, natural compounds that actively calm inflammation inside your body. Citrus fruits work in a similar way. Oranges, mandarins, grapefruits, lemons, and limes are all rich in vitamin C, which plays a key role in neutralizing inflammatory processes. And it's not limited to fruit. Foods like tomatoes, red bell peppers, and broccoli also deliver solid amounts of vitamin C, giving you multiple ways to support your body without needing anything extreme. You can even add a simple habit like squeezing fresh lemon into a jug of water and keeping it in your fridge. Small actions like this, repeated daily, begin to shift your internal environment. While supplements are an option, the goal should always be to get as much as possible from real food first, then fill any gaps if needed. And then there's extra virgin olive oil, one of the most underrated anti-inflammatory foods. High-quality olive oil contains powerful polyphenols like hydroxytyrosol and oleocanthal, the same compounds responsible for that slight peppery sensation you feel at the back of your throat. That sensation isn't just flavor, it's a signal that the oil is rich in active compounds that help reduce inflammation in your body. Cooking with it or even dipping it with food can become a simple, effective habit. Fiber is another major player that often doesn't get the attention it deserves. When you consume dietary fiber, you're not just feeding yourself, you're feeding your gut microbiome, the trillions of bacteria living inside you. These microbes break down fiber and produce short-chain fatty acids, which directly lower inflammation throughout the body. Some of the best sources include raspberries, which are surprisingly dense in fiber for their size, as well as avocados, mushrooms rich in beta-glucan, and apples that contain compounds like quercetin with additional anti-inflammatory effects. Vegetables like broccoli, kale, bok choy, and Brussels sprouts bring both fiber and protective compounds together, making them incredibly valuable in a daily diet. And then there's one of the simplest, most effective beverages you can add, green tea. It may seem ordinary, but it's packed with powerful polyphenols known as catechins, especially EGCG, a compound that has been widely studied for its ability to reduce oxidative stress and inflammation at the cellular level. This isn't just about feeling healthy, it's about actively protecting your cells from damage that accumulates over time. Every cup you drink contributes to that process in a meaningful way. Now, coming back to brown fat, the system that helps your body burn energy instead of storing it, the science behind it goes deeper than just cold exposure. When your body experiences cold, it activates something called the beta, 3-adrenergic receptor. This receptor responds to adrenaline, the same hormone released during stress or sudden shocks. When triggered, it sends a signal that activates brown fat, essentially telling your body to start burning fuel to generate heat. This is why practices like cold plunges have become popular. They directly stimulate this pathway. But interestingly, scientists discovered that this same receptor exists in other parts of the body, like the bladder. Certain medications designed to treat bladder spasms target this receptor to relax the bladder. Researchers at the National Institutes of Health explored whether these medications could also activate brown fat, and when they tested it, the results were clear. Brown fat lit up significantly. However, the doses required were much higher than what would normally be used for medical treatment, making it impractical and unsafe to use medication for this purpose. But this discovery opened a new line of thinking. If both cold exposure and certain chemical signals can activate the system, what else can do the same thing safely and naturally? The answer lies in what happens next inside your cells. Once that receptor is activated, it triggers a protein called UCP1, uncoupling protein 1. This protein lives inside the mitochondria, the tiny energy-producing structures within your cells. Brown fat is packed with these mitochondria, which is exactly why it's so effective at burning energy. These mitochondria act like miniature power plants, converting fuel into heat instead of storing it. They're rich in iron, and when iron interacts with oxygen, it creates that characteristic brown color. That's literally why brown fat looks brown. It's dense with these active energy burning units. So anything that can activate the receptor, stimulate UCP1, or support mitochondrial function can help turn on your body's internal space heater. And this is where food becomes incredibly powerful again, beyond cold exposure or medications. There's a wide range of everyday foods, fresh, dried, canned, even beverages that can influence these pathways and help your body burn fat more efficiently. The key takeaway here is simple but important. No matter where you're starting from, you're not locked into your current state. Your body is responsive, adaptable, and capable of change when you give it the right signals consistently. No matter where you are right now in your health journey, the most important thing to understand is this. You're not stuck. Your body isn't working against you. It's responding to what you consistently give it. And that means you can absolutely turn things around, often faster than you expect, by making a few intentional changes. The first step isn't some extreme diet or cutting everything out overnight. It's awareness. Start with something simple but powerful, a food diary. For the next couple of weeks, don't try to change anything. Just observe. Write down everything you eat, every meal, every snack, every drink. No guilt, no judgment, just honest tracking. Most people are surprised when they actually see their patterns written out. You begin to notice how often you eat, how much you eat, and the kinds of foods that show up repeatedly. It's similar to tracking your spending. Once you see where everything is going, you gain clarity. And that clarity gives you control. After those 2 weeks, you'll have a clear picture of your habits, and that's when the real shift begins. Instead of jumping into restriction, the strategy is something much more effective, swapping in, not cutting out. This idea changes everything because it removes the feeling of deprivation. Rather than telling yourself what you can't have, you focus on adding better options into your routine. Find foods you genuinely enjoy that also support your health, and start incorporating them. As you do that, those healthier choices naturally begin to replace the less beneficial ones. You're not forcing anything out, you're simply making less room for it. Over time, this becomes sustainable because it doesn't feel like punishment, it feels like an upgrade. As you build that foundation, one nutrient becomes especially important, particularly as you get older: protein. Once you move past your 40S, your body becomes less efficient at maintaining muscle mass. And protein plays a critical role in preserving and building it back up. But the question isn't just how much protein you need, it's where you're getting it from. This is where balance matters. Instead of locking yourself into one strict way of eating, it's more effective to stay flexible and open. An omnivore-style approach allows you to choose from a wide range of protein sources: red meat, poultry, fish, and plant-based options like legumes. Each has its place, and preference matters more than people often admit. You're far more likely to stick with a way of eating that includes foods you actually enjoy. Health isn't about putting yourself in a box or following rigid rules. It's about finding alignment between what's good for your body and what fits your lifestyle. There's ongoing debate about whether red meat should be reduced or eliminated, and while opinions vary, the broader takeaway from research is clear balance consistently outperforms extremes. In fact, studies looking at long-term brain health and cognitive function have shown that people who follow a balanced diet tend to perform better over time than those who strictly eliminate entire food groups, including vegetarians in some cases. That doesn't mean one approach is right or wrong for everyone, but it does highlight an important point. Going to extremes can sometimes mean missing out on nutrients or benefits that science is still uncovering. A balanced diet gives your body access to a wider range of nutrients, and protein is one of the most critical among them. At the end of the day, all of this comes back to one simple truth. Your body responds to consistency. Whether it's activating brown fat, reducing inflammation, or improving overall metabolic health, the small choices you make daily add up in powerful ways. You don't need perfection, and you don't need to overhaul your entire life overnight. What you need is a starting point and a willingness to stay consistent. When you combine awareness, smarter food choices, and a balanced approach to nutrition, you create an environment where your body can do what it's designed to do, function better, burn fat more efficiently, and protect itself from long-term disease. And once you understand how these systems work together, it stops feeling complicated. It becomes something you can manage, improve, and sustain over time. If you found this valuable, then you're going to want to watch what comes next. Because there's another piece of the puzzle that most people completely overlook. And once you see it, it changes how you think about your health entirely.